the one, the only, Ben Sion. Good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. Today is Nazir Daf Lamed Ches number 38. We have a great share for you today, as usual. Let's get started. Lamed Chem and Aleph on the top, as we continue this discussion about the different Yisurim of Nazir. We'll discuss it with Ben Sion. A fourth shir where I talk about my opinion of Rabbi Akiva, and conclude it with today's Gemara, which is very relevant to it. There's actually an interesting Tosfos and Rush that say something very unique about the Yisurim of the Nazir. We'll try to figure it out in the context of this Gemara. Let's start where we left off yesterday, the two dots, Amid Chem and Aleph, about 7 lines down. Amar of Elazar, Esther Revios Hain. There's 10 times in the Torah where the shir of a Revius is significant. Menakid Rav Kahana biyodei, Rav Kahana had a mnemonic to remember them. Chamesh sumkasa v'chamesh chivrasa, 5 red liquids and 5 white or clear liquids. Chamesh sumkasa, what are the 5 red liquids? So his mnemonic was Nazir v'osa Pesach shahoru b'mikdash. That's the statement he remembered. Umesu, and they died. So what are the 5 cases? Nazir, Revius Yain Nazir, like we said here. This seems to be the opinion of everybody, right? This brought halacha aleph over here in the Ein Mishpat, that if a Nazir consumes a revius of wine or grape juice, it's chayiv. It's a share of revius, which is 3 ounces, not a kazayas. We'll talk more about that going forward. Osa Pesach, for making the holiday of Pesach, Amar Rav Yehuda Mashmuel, Arba kosas alal sarach shebehen r'ktei revius. There's a halacha about dalad kosas on Pesach. Each cup has to have at least a revius. And technically, according to most poskim, you're supposed to drink most of your cup. Shahoru, shasa revius yain al yor b'mikdash. If you drank a revius of wine, al yora, you shouldn't give a psak halacha. Rabbi, it's relevant for Purim. You drank a revius of wine, you can't give a psak halacha. But mikdash, shasa revius yain v'nechsas l'mikdash chayav misa. If you drank a revius of wine and you went into the base of mikdash, I believe it includes the azaro also, or you went into into the heichal, and turning into the kodesh hakdashim. While you're inebriated, you're chayav misa. Misa b'dei shemaim. Umesu, the sadi minayim l'revius dam sheyosem mishnei mesim. Shem etama ba'oel. This is not about wine; it's about blood, which is also red. If a revius of dam comes from 2 different people, right? Half a revius from one person, half a revius the other person, and you find yourself situated in a roof, underneath a roof, where this blood is. Shem etama ba'oel. Right? You become tummy just being in the OL. You don't have to touch it. You don't have to carry it. Just by being underneath the same roof as a revius. Normally the share is revius from one person. The chiddush is revius from 2 people. Shenemar ba'al kol nafshos meis lo yavo. It's talking about the Kohen Gadol. He shouldn't be metame himself. It's an interesting lashon. Nafshos meis. Nafshos is plural, but meis is singular. So therefore the chiddush is that even if you have a revius, but combined from 2 different dead people, nefesh, damu and nefesh, the Gemara says dam is usually referred to as the nefesh, so therefore it makes you tamei. It makes the Kohen Gadol tamei. It makes Kohen Gadol tamei in any way that that the blood of a dead person makes him tamei, right? Corpse tuma is transmitted through the blood also. V'chamesh chivrasa, in 5 cases of a clear liquid, or not a red liquid. Chalas, what's a mnemonic for remembering that? Chalas, Nazir, Mesorah, Shnifsalu, B'Shabbos. Chalas, right? Chalas refers to Revius Shemin L'Chala. This refers to when you bring a korban toda, you have to bring it with 40 loaves of bread. Now, 10 of those are chametz, 30 of them are matzah, not allowed to be chametz. Out of those 30, they're separated into 10 chalos, loaves, obviously it's not chametz, 10 rakikin wafers, and 10 ruvachat, which are deep fried sort of wafers also. So you have to bake them in oil. So you have a chatzi lug, which you divide among all of those 30 things made out of matzah. And a revius is used for the chalos and the rakikin, even though here it also says chala, but it also means for the rakikin. And the other revius halog is used for the muvrachas, which has to be deep fried in oil. Nazir, revius shemen lenazir. That also a Nazir, obviously he's allowed to consume oil. This is talking about when he brings his karbanos at the end, he does not bring revucha. He doesn't bring a deep fried one. He only brings chalos among his 40 loaves of bread. I believe he brings. He only brings chalos, and 10 of them are chalos, and 10 of them are rakikin. So there also revius is for the oil that he's needed for both those chalos and the rakikin, the wafers. Mitzora revius mayim mitzora. That's talking about Tzora when he's matire himself. He has to take two birds. One bird he lets fly free, and one bird they shecht, and they pour the blood in an amount of water. It has to be visible in the amount of water. So therefore, you need a revius of water to accept the blood into it. The blood is poured into the revius of water. Shenifsalu disnan v'shar kol mashkin tmein postin es hagvia b'revius. We learned in Masechas Eruvin about the concept of tumas hagvia. That if you eat a certain amount of tamei foods, it happens to be either 1.5 beitzas or 2 beitzas. We have two opinions in Masechas Eruvin. So that is posel the gvia. It makes the body, right? It doesn't make you tamei to eat food, but there are abundant where it goes there that you can't eat truma if you ate tamei food. So if you ate a certain amount of tamei foods, right, and if you're a kohen, you can't eat truma midarabbanan. What about if you drink tamei liquids? So therefore, for this halacha, we learn if you drink a revius of tamei liquid, that also apostles the goof and makes you, as a kohen, unable to eat truma midarabbanan. But Shabbos, the last halacha, this time shar kol mashkim revius, shar kol shofkim revius. The Mishnah in Maseches Shabbos talks about the shirim for hotzah on Shabbos, for carrying outside on Shabbos. If there's milk, there's oil, those are smaller shirim. However, when it comes to other beverages, the standard shir for beverages, there's not talked about yayin and mayim, water and wine, and I think milk and honey. Those have different shiurim. But the other mashkim, other beverages, even Logan Paul's Prime, KSI and Logan Paul's Prime, if you know what that is, it's a revius. You take it out of revius on Shabbos. Shofim Shabbos. Any wastewater also the shares are revius. So those are the 5 cases of clear liquids. Is there no other cases? Va'ikam revius noten liyadayim la'acher le'echad afilu l'shnayim. This is halacha we learn in Hilchos Netilas Yadayim. If you're with us Shulchan Aruch Yomi, you better be with us. We're learning Shulchan Aruch Yomi, a historic cycle, the first cycle ever of Shulchan Aruch Yomi, a siman a day, 5 days a week. We are currently, today we're supposed to do Reish Tedvav, 215 Orach Chaim. 215 Siman Orach Chaim is pretty good in, I think, less than a year. Yeah, it's 215. Without Shabbos and Yom Tov, I guess you're on 250 days. Shabbos and Shabbos and Friday, you have 250 days around the year. So we're almost nearing in a year about doing that. So hope to finish in 6 years. So when it comes to Netilas Yadayim, you can do a revius, right? Not only the revius water is the share for one person, but also even 2 people. As long as you start with a revius, you can wash 2 people's hands. Now, it's not really possible to wash 2 people's hands with a revius of water. It's very small, only 3 ounces. But obviously the answer is you can probably, pour it on and, rinse it in. And probably the shear is until your knuckles, not your entire hand. That's one of the proofs. I mean, seeming proofs. The machlokas in the poskim, but it seems to be. The Gemara said, that we don't talk about because it's 2 days over there. Everyone agrees a revius for one person is the shear, but whatever for 2 people. So that's a machlokas over there. And since when the halacha is quoted, it's talking about even for 2 people, and that's machlokas, whether they can use it for the second person or not, that's not included in this listing. If you don't revius, when we're talking about Masechah Sota, the next Masechah we're learning, right? You have to make the minchas, the sota, the waters, the main marim that you put, you throw Shem Hashem into the cloth, right? So how much water do you put in it? So the Tana Kama says chatzi lug, half a lug, or Yehuda says revius halug, 1/4 a lug, half of that share. Again, that's a machlokas. We're not talking about that. You got kama mayim nosel socha kol shehu rizakam revius. So machlokas Masechas Brachos. We also learn Masechas Brachos. Both the Mishnayos and the Gemara. Actually, I don't have a share Daf Yomi on Masechas Brachos or the Mishnah Yomi. I started Mishnah Yomi after that. I started giving shiurim on Daf Yomi after Masechas Brachos. I started toward the end of Masechas Yuma. So, if you want to mevatel, we did learn this about this in Shulchan Aruch Yomi or Chaim when we talked about Hilchos Kriya Shema. So you want to say Kriya Shema, if you have urine, you're not allowed to say Kriya Shema in the presence of urine. But if you pour a certain amount of water into the urine, so it's mavatal it, and you're allowed to say Kriya Shema in front of it. So the Tana Kama says even pouring a little water, even right, a drop of water, makes the urine not a problem. Mazakom revius, you have to pour revius. Again, I don't know why the Gemara keeps on saying these questions because we just said, okay, it's machlokas, we're not talking about it. Yikam mikvah. Now this is halach midoraisa. Even though a person, when they have to go to the mikvah, they have to go into a place that has 40 sa of water, right? Which is a good amount of water. Check out your local mikvah. When it comes to tefillas kalim, right, for a person needs 40 sa, but for a kli, like for a needle or something like that, midoraisa, even a revius of water is considered to be a kosher mikvah. So the whereas bar me'ahid the batul rabbanon, the rabbanon made a takana that no, even for any kli also you need to have 40 sa also midrabbanon. Midraisa, of course, it works with the revius midrabbanon, so therefore we don't count that because technically midrabbanon you need more. Revius is not enough. Top of the Mishnah. Again, we're still discussing the Mishnah on Daf Lamed Daled, first Mishnah on the parak. Eno chayav ala shiochem and anavim kazayis. You're not chayav until you eat from the grapes, the kazayis, meaning you could eat from grapes and chartzanim and zag. We'll talk about eating different parts, but right, you eat a little grape here and a little grape there. If you eat in kedei achilas pras, you're chayav. So the Gemara says, and then the Mishnah continues and says, the Mishnah Rishona says that if you drink, right, that's about eating grapes. If you drink wine, the share is a revius. And then Rabbi Akiva said, right, even if shara pita b'yayin, v'yabak l'tzaref kazayis, you're chayav, right? Even what does Rabbi Akiva mean? We'll talk about it in a second. But so Tana Kama, lo medami l'hun l'chol yisuri nazir l'shtia, right? Tana Kama, the Tana Kama when he says that if you drank a revius of wine, right? Obviously, the first clause in the Mishnah says it was according to everybody, seemingly, that if you eat grapes or whatever products come from grapes, the share is a kazayis, which is achila, right? But when you drink wine, the share is a shtia, which is a revius. So he doesn't compare eating to drinking. Rabbi Akiva came and the pasuk says, I'll quote you the pasuk. Numbers 6:3. And then it says va'anavim lachem yiveshim al yochal. So it's a vav, right? Why is Rabbi Akiva says why is there a vav in the Torah? Connecting it back to the previous part of the pasuk, v'chol mishras anavim lo yishta, which is talking about drinking. So there have obviously some. When we say the halacha about eating, there's obviously some connection to drinking also. So Rabbi Akiva says, I'll read you according to Arshkal's interpretation of the Gemara. Since Va'anavim was written on the Vav, Ma'achila Kazayas, Av Kol Yisur and Kazayas, right? Just like it says, Va'anavim Lachmi Veishon Layochal, and when you're eating, the share of Achila is a Kazayas, so therefore the Vav connects it back that, but the Shtia is also a Kazayas. The Shtia is also a Kazayas. Now, I'm going to give you the explanation of Artscroll over here, and the footnote over here. They quote Tosas and the Rush. Tosas and the Rush say that according to Rabbi Akiva, even though Rabbi Akiva in the Mishnah says, "Afilu shara pita b'yayin, v'yabo k'dei l'tzarif," right? Between, we learned yesterday, heter mitzarif l'isser, right? Between the bread and the wine, according to Article, you dipped the bread in the wine, you had a share of a kazayis. That's enough to be mechayiv. But we said presumably only in that case. Obviously, according to Rabbi Akiva, if you just drank wine without eating bread, the share should be revius. But no, those are Rosh say Rabbi Akiva learns whenever whether you eat or you drink any products of the grape, whether it's wine, you actually drank a beverage, or you ate, the share is always a kazayas, right? Ma'achil kazayas. The share is always a kazayas. So the first, right, before this machlokas, the Mishnah Rishon Rabbi Akiva, it said the share is a kazayas. So the share is always a kazayas. Even if you drank without eating bread, without dipping in the bread, without eating bread, you just drank, the share is always a kazayas, right? So 1 ounce of drinking wine is chayiv. And according to Tanakama, the Mishnah Rishona, right, the shear is always a revius, right? Even if you eat, they learn the opposite, completely opposite. And the previous statement in the Mishnah, which talked about eating the kazayis, that was only according to Rabbi Akiva. That was according to Rabbi Akiva. According to the Tanakama, we don't paskin like, right? The shear is a revius, whether you drink or even if you eat. If you eat grapes, you have to eat a revius of grapes. I mean, a revius is 3 kazayis. You have to eat 3 ounces of grapes in order to be chayav. That's the Tosas and the Rush here. That's what they learn from this Gemara over here. Now, obviously, this is very difficult because The Mishnah before and seems to say according to everybody. The Mishnah Rishona was arguing l'chora only about when it comes to drinking wine. It makes sense. So there's no reason to say you're only chayav for eating. It's a big kula. You're only chayav for eating grapes if you eat 3 kazayas, not 1 kazayas. Sheva achila is a kazayas. But that's the way they learn the Mishnah Rishona. Rabbi Kiva says a big chumrah, right? Even if you drink wine, if 1 ounce of wine, even without bread, is a kazayas, I don't believe this is true. I believe they're only arguing in a limited case, right? In that case that Rikiva talks about, right, where you're shara pito bayaya. And I will use my understanding of the Mishnah. We'll read back the Mishnah with Mansion to again strengthen what I've been saying over the past 3 or 4 days about shara pito bayaya. Does not mean that he dipped the bread in the wine. It means that he consumed bread while drinking wine to help lishros b'meyav, right? Shara pita b'yayin, he helps the bread digest by drinking wine, and therefore hetem etzaref le'isra kazayis. It's called achila because the wine you're drinking is to help digest the food. So therefore, a combined kazayis of bread and wine is enough to mechayiv you. But if you're just drinking, obviously Rabbi Kiva would say a revius. That's a shir revius. It's only called achila. That's what the pasuk's telling you, right? The whole mishras hanav l'isha. That's the pasuk of mishras. Is shria, right? It's connected to l'isha hanav l'yochal to tell you that when you have a case of mishras, right? When you have a case where you're shara pito b'yayin, then you go with the shir achila, which is a kazayas, and even heter mitzaref l'isra, right? That's another chiddush. All right, Tana Rabbanan. L'chayiv al yayin b'nei atzmo. Tana Rabbanan. V'navim lachem yiveshim l'yochal l'chayiv al zeh b'nei atzmo v'al zeh b'nei atzmo. Right. It says grapes that are moist and yiveshim, dried grapes, guess raisins you shouldn't eat, to tell you that you're chayiv. The reason the pasuk tells you, and they're both called really products of the grape. The Torah specifically says different ones to say that you're chayiv. You had raisins, a gazayas of raisins, and a gazayas of grapes. You'd be chayiv twice, 2 sets of malchus. From here you learn that any yisur in Torah, ma kanhu min echad. It really comes from a grape. However, the Torah calls them 2 different unique things. And we learn from the Brayser chayiv on each one by itself. Similarly, anywhere else in the Torah, where it's really the source is the same thing, however, the Torah calls it 2 different things. You're chayiv a set of malchus for each of them. Lasuye, what is that coming to include? Chamra chatav invi, right? If you ate grapes, and you drank new wine, I guess it'd be grape juice. If you drank grape juice, the envy, even though technically you just have to squeeze out the grapes and get grape juice, you're chayiv 2 sets of malchus. And I guess the share for drinking the grape juice would be a revius. That's what I would assume. The envy, I mean, according to the Tosas and Rush, no, the share is a kazayas, but I don't think so. The envy, and if you ate grapes, fresh grapes, you would also, because it says yayin v'sheichar. Yayin v'sheichar is mentioned separately in the pasuk. Yayin is fresh grape juice. Sheichar, I guess, is the aged grape juice. That's the way the Targum Unclosed translate it. Amar Abaye. Abaye says, Achal chartzan lokish dayim. Achal zag lokish dayim. If you ate chartzan, right, the grape seed, right, enough, a kazayas of chartzan, presumably, you get 2 sets of malchus. One you get from, right, you can't eat mechartzan and bad zag. It says you shouldn't eat. And also, it says in a general isser in the Torah, it says, Mikol asher yasem migefen yayin lo yochal. Anything which is made from the grapevine, you shouldn't eat. So it's a general prohibition. So a grape seed is included in that. Similarly, if you have a grape peel, chartanim adzag, you get 1 set of malchus. You get set of malchus for the general prohibition. Mikol asher yasem migefen yayin lo yochal. You shouldn't eat. Rava Omar. If you had both of them, right, you get 1 for chartzan and 1 for zag. There are 2 different types. The grape seeds and grape peels are different things. And also you get the general injunction, right? Rava disagrees on Avai. If you eat a chartzan, you only get 1 malchus. A zag, you only get 1 malchus. A kazayas of chartzan, a kazayas of zag, you only get 1 malchus. You don't get malchus for mikol sheyasem migefen yayin lo yochal. That's a general prohibition. It's not something that you violate, you get malchus for. General prohibition you don't get. There's a famous malchus Abaye and Rava elsewhere in Mesechus Pesachim. They have the same machlokas. Do you get malchus for lav shebekal? It's a general type of lav that includes a lot of things. So the Gemara is going to try to prove who's right. Abaye Rava. Meser Rav Papa. Papa asked the following question. Lezer from Bryce. Lezer Omer Nazir Shaya Shosi Yain Kol Yom. He's drinking wine the entire day. So they only warned him and said don't drink wine. And they didn't warn him a second time. He keeps on drinking the whole day. Even if he drank 100 reveals, doesn't make it there. When you chayav one set of malchus. Amrlo, al tishta. V'hu shosa. They said don't drink, and he drinks a reveals. Then they warn him again, and he drinks again another reveals. Chayav kolachas v'achas. You chayav a separate set of malchus for each drinking. Acha anavim lachem yiveshim chartzanim v'zagim v'sachat eshkol shal anavim v'shasa lo chamesh. If they warned you for each of them, right? They just give a warning, don't do it. And they told you about all the different prohibitions of a Nazir. And he ate moist grapes, yiveshim, raisins, hartzanim. He ate the grape seeds, the grape peels. Right? He had grape juice, v'shasa, and he drank it. He gets 5 sets of malchus, like we learned. Anytime the Torah specifies different things, you get 5 sets of malchus. If you hold like a Abaye, that you get a malchus for the general prohibition, right? So you should get 6 sets of malchus. The Gemara says, so Abaye answers, Tana v'shayir. Yes, it really could have said 6, but it left out. It was talking about, I just want to tell you get a lot. But really, it meant 6. My shire, the high shire. And the Gemara says, really, it only makes sense that it left out if they actually left out more than one thing. So shire liyachal dvar, actually you get 7, right? You get mikol shayasa, and also for violating your nazirus. Right, nazir is a type of neder. So you violate your neder, your nazirus, by drinking wine. In mishum high, the Gemara says if that lav shura, that's not something that's left out. That there's no reason the brisa to include, because that's something that doesn't apply specifically to a nazir. It applies to any neder, right? Even if it's not a nazirus. So it makes sense that it shouldn't be in there. Amal Ravina Parzaki Ravashi. Ravina Parzaki said to Ravashi, we have another thing left of Ashayir Debena B'Yinayim, right? If you ate the pulp of the grape, you didn't eat the grape seed. You didn't eat the grape peel. You ate the pulp in between, right? So it left that out, and it also left out the lav shebeklalos. So really 7 things. So Abaye is right. So really, it seems like the brisa should be more proof for Abaye. Elamar Rav Papa lo Tanya midi chamesh. Rav Papa answers, right? It didn't really actually say 5, even though the way we have the brisa written in our Gemara, loke chamesh, right? That really was written in. Really, the correct lashon of the brisa was loke pamim harbe or something like that, many times. Rav Papa said chamesh. He said chamesh. So the Gemara asks, "How osva chamesh?" Top of Lamed Tet and Aleph. How could he make up a brisa? It didn't say 5, so why is he asking? Am I saying 5? I thought Abaye, that he says you're local lav shebeklalos, right? It wasn't a tradition that he had. It wasn't, right? It was just his own svara. And if I proved to him a brisa, even though I'm misquoting the brisa, but I proved to him a brisa, Rav Papa, Rav's shita made a lot more sense. He'll be choser, but he'll think about it a little more. He'll retract from that. I didn't know that he had a tradition. Abaye had a tradition from his teachers that really was 5. You are loka lav shebeklalos. That's why he made up the brisa to try to prove to discern whether Abaye really just thought about it, for an instant and really could retract from what he said, or he had really a tradition and really it is a legitimate opinion. Right? He says, and then the Mishnah ends off. It's a machlokas what chartzanim and zagim mean. According to Rabbi Yehuda, chartzanim means the peel and zagim means the pit. And according to Rabbi Yossi, we pass like chartzanim mean the peel, they mean the pit, and zagim mean the peel. I'm Rabbi Yosef commenting on portanim v'aditzurim. We have the Targum Onkelos, right? Chartzanim ad zag is portanim ad zag in Rabbi Yossi. That's Rabbi Yossi. Targum Onkelos like Rabbi Yossi. Portzanim in Aramaic refers to the grape seeds. Aditzurim refers to the grape peels, like Rabbi Yossi. That's the conclusion of today's shir. Stay tuned for Eid Ben Sion, where I finalize my discussion. Sharapito Bayayin. Listen, I offered my unique position, and I have to prove it throughout the Gemara. And actually, today is pretty much going to be a good proof for me. Obviously, it's going to be against maybe what Tosas and the Rush that are brought by the Art Scroll, but I think it makes a lot of sense. We're going to analyze the Mishnah a little more, the exact lashon of the Mishnah, and put it into today's Gemara. Eid Ben Sion coming up next.